So, I haven't talked to my family in 4 years. Not by choice exactly, but they pretty much disowned me when I dropped out of business school to work on cars full-time. My dad's some big investment guy at this firm downtown. Mom's all about their social standing or whatever. And my siblings Micah and Layla both went into finance like the good little clones they are. I always loved working on cars. Even in high school, I was the guy fixing everyone's beaters in the parking lot after class. Dad hated it, called it grease monkey work, and said I was wasting my potential every chance he got. When I got into state for business, only because he threatened to cut me off if I went to tech school, he acted like I'd finally seen the light or some BS. But 2 years in, I was miserable and failing classes. Meanwhile, I was making actual money on the side, working at this garage specializing in Japanese imports. The owner took me under his wing, taught me everything. When a spot opened up for full-time, I jumped on it and dropped out. That Thanksgiving, I told everyone. Dad threw his wine glass against the wall. Mom cried like someone died. Micah and Layla just sat there with these matching smirks. Dad said if I wanted to throw my life away, I could do it without their support. Mom literally said, "What will I tell the neighbors?" Like that was the biggest concern. I walked out, and that was it. 4 years of nothing. No calls, no texts, no birthday cards, just silence. I built my life anyway, worked my ass off at the garage, saved up, started taking on my own clients on the side. I wasn't exactly rolling in cash, but I was doing what I loved and paying my bills. Then last week, this fancy envelope shows up at my apartment. Gold embossed invitation to Dad's retirement party at Meadowbrook Country Club. The snobby one where they once wouldn't let me use the bathroom because my boots weren't appropriate footwear. There was this handwritten note from Mom saying, "Family should be together for important moments." After 4 years of radio silence, I almost threw it away, but something made me keep it. Maybe I wanted to show them I survived without them. Maybe I'm just an idiot. IDK? The day of the party, I had this customer's car I was finishing up. This sweet 90s Japanese import that needed work before the owner flew in from out of state. Couldn't leave it half done, so I went straight from the shop. I was wearing clean dark jeans and my shop's polo shirt. Not country club fancy, but definitely presentable. Not covered in grease or anything. I drove my daily, a 2006 Mazda I've been slowly restoring. It runs perfect. I rebuilt the engine myself. But cosmetically, it's a work in progress. The front bumper has some duct tape reinforcement after someone hit it in a parking lot, and one window is temporarily covered with heavy-duty plastic because the replacement glass is on backorder from Japan. When I pulled up to the valet stand, the guy in the red vest looked at my car like I'd just driven up in a literal dumpster. He looks at me, then at the car, then back at me with this fake smile. "Sir, we don't park those here. There's a Walmart parking lot down the street." I was about to tell him where he could stick his valet ticket when my dad appeared. He must have been watching arrivals from the patio. He walks over, grabs my arm, like physically grabs it, and drags me over to where his golf buddies are all standing with their wives. Dad announces super loud so everyone can hear, "Gentlemen, this is what failure looks like. My biggest regret in human form." They all laughed. Not uncomfortable laughs either. These were genuine laughs like this was the funniest thing they'd heard all day. I just stood there, feeling like a kid again. That same feeling when nothing I did was ever good enough. Mom appears next to him with her martini glass and that weird frozen face from whatever procedures she's been getting. "We tell people we have 2 kids, not 3. The neighbors think you died years ago." More laughter. People are actually turning to watch now, like it's some kind of show. That's when Micah and Layla join in, because of course they do. Layla looks me up and down and goes, "He wore his one good shirt. The broke loser has one shirt. Same one from Christmas 2019. It wasn't, but whatever." Micah points toward the parking area. Bro still drives that 2006 Mazda with the duct tape bumper. Even has a trash bag for a window. One of Dad's friends slaps him on the back and says, "This is your son? LOL." He literally said LOL out loud like some boomer who just discovered internet slang. Another guy adds, "My gardener drives a better car." Mom was really going now. "He lives in a studio apartment with roommates at 27. Dad finishes with what he clearly thinks is the knockout punch. While his siblings have real careers, this one delivers pizza on weekends. The entire patio erupted. Someone actually took photos of me, like I was some zoo exhibit. The failure son on display. Here's the thing though. Everything they said was wrong. I don't live in a studio. I own a small house I've been fixing up. I don't have roommates. I have 2 guys who work for me who crash at my place sometimes when we're working late. I don't deliver pizzas. I run my own specialty shop that's become the place for Japanese imports in our area, but they never bothered to ask. Never even tried to find out what my life was actually like. Just assumed I was a failure because I didn't follow their precious plan. I could have corrected them, could have mentioned the waiting list of clients, or the feature that Auto Magazine did on my shop last year, or the celebrities who shipped their cars to me for work. Instead, I smiled, reached into my back pocket and pulled out this black envelope I'd been carrying around for about 2 months waiting for the right moment. "I have a small surprise for you," I said to Dad, handing it over. My voice was calm, which seemed to confuse him. Failures aren't supposed to have dignity. I turned and walked out. Didn't make a scene, didn't yell, just left. Got in my trash bag window Mazda and drove home, feeling weirdly peaceful. I knew exactly what was about to happen. That night around 11 p.m., my phone detonated. First Dad, then Mom, then both siblings. Within an hour, I had 67 frantic messages, 28 missed calls, and voicemails filled with panic, sobbing, and desperate begging. See, about 2 months ago, I was working on this super rare Toyota for a client who happens to be with the SEC. While he was waiting, we got talking, and he mentioned investigating a firm that sounded really familiar. During a break, he showed me some documents, asking my opinion on car valuations they were using for tax purposes. That's when I saw Dad's signature, and Micah's, on paperwork that was, let's just say, creative with the numbers. The black envelope had copies of those documents, plus a letter explaining exactly what I'd seen, who I'd seen it with, and what would happen next. I didn't answer any of their messages that night, or the next day. Let them panic like I used to panic when Dad would tell me I was worthless. On the third day, I got a text from Dad at 3:48 a.m. "Son, please call me immediately. This is a matter of life and death." My response: "Now you know what failure really looks like. I'm just getting started." Update 1. So it's been a week since the retirement party disaster where my family publicly humiliated me, and I left that black envelope behind. If you missed the first post, basically, my finance-obsessed family hasn't spoken to me in 4 years since I dropped out of business school to work on cars. Then, they invited me to Dad's retirement party just to mock me in front of everyone. I left behind an envelope with copies of some shady financial documents I'd seen that had Dad's and my brother's signatures on them. After ignoring their panic for a few days, things got interesting. Dad showed up at my shop unannounced yesterday morning. Not gonna lie, it was kind of satisfying watching him pull up in his Mercedes and then hesitate before stepping into my grease monkey world. He looked completely out of place in his fancy suit among the lifts and tools. There were 3 cars in various stages of work: a classic Datsun, a modded Subaru, and a pretty rare Nissan Skyline that was almost finished. I was under the Skyline checking a coolant line when his shiny dress shoes appeared next to the car. I didn't stop working or acknowledge him for a solid minute. He cleared his throat like 3 times before speaking. "Dale, we need to talk about what you've done. What I've done. That's rich." I slid out from under the car and stood up. I figured I'd let him sweat a bit more. So I walked over to my workbench and started organizing tools like he wasn't even there. He followed me, looking increasingly uncomfortable. "The thing in the envelope," he said, lowering his voice even though my 2 employees were in the break room. "You have no idea what you're messing with. This could ruin everything we've built." I turned around and just stared at him. "We didn't build anything. You built something while telling me I was worthless for not wanting to be part of it." He ran his hand through his hair, a nervous habit he's had since I was a kid. That's when I noticed how much older he looked, like he'd aged years in just a few days. "Look, I'm willing to make amends," he said. "I can get you a position at the firm. We can say you were working on a special project these past few years. No one needs to know about this." He waved his hand around at my shop. I laughed. Literally laughed in his face. "You think I want to work for you? You think I want to put on a suit and shuffle papers all day? Look around, Dad." That's when I saw it finally click for him. He actually looked at my shop for the first time. Saw the high-end specialty tools. The waiting list board with client names he probably recognized. The magazine covers framed on the wall featuring cars I'd worked on. "This isn't some hobby," I told him. "This is my business. I built this. While you were telling everyone I was a failure, I was building something real." He tried to recover, saying something about how he was proud but concerned about my future, blah, blah, blah. I cut him off. "What do you actually want?" I asked. "Because we both know you didn't come here to check on me after 4 years. He swallowed hard and finally got to the point. "There's a regulatory compliance issue. We need your signature on some family trust documents by the end of the week or there could be problems." And there it was. They needed me. Not because they missed me or regretted how they treated me, because I was suddenly useful to them. I smiled. "You know what? I think I'll need to review those documents carefully. Maybe have my lawyer look at them. Could take weeks, months even." His face went from pale to red in about 2 seconds. "The firm can't wait that long, Dale. This is serious." So was publicly humiliating me in front of all your friends, I said. Guess we both have problems. He started to say something else, but the shop phone rang. I picked it up. It was a client checking on their car. While I was talking, Dad just stood there awkwardly, looking at the framed photos on my wall, pictures of me with clients and their finished cars, evidence of the success he never bothered to ask about. After I hung up, he tried a different approach. Your mother is very upset, he said. She hasn't been sleeping. This whole situation has taken a toll on her health. Nice try, I told him. Mom seemed pretty energetic when she was telling everyone you have 2 kids instead of 3. He flinched at that. Dale, be reasonable. We can work this out as a family. We're not a family, I reminded him. You made that very clear 4 years ago. We're just people who happen to share DNA. The shop door opened and a client walked in, this older guy who collects rare Japanese cars. He recognized my dad immediately. Oh, Mr. Reynolds. Didn't expect to see you here. Your son is a genius with these cars. You must be so proud. Dad looked like he was about to short-circuit. He mumbled something about, yes, very talented, then made an excuse about a meeting and practically ran out the door. I thought that might be the end of it for the day, but around 2 in the afternoon, my sister Layla showed up. Unlike Dad, she came in her casual clothes, which for her means designer jeans that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. She walked in looking disgusted, like she might catch poor person disease just from breathing the air. Dale, we need to talk about what you're doing to the family. I was in the middle of installing a custom exhaust system. Didn't even look up. What I'm doing to the family? That's funny. She crossed her arms and did this exaggerated sigh. Look, you made your point. Dad was harsh at the party. We all said things we shouldn't have, but threatening the family business over it? That's taking things too far. I put down my tools and looked at her. You called me a broke loser with one shirt in front of 30 people. Mom said she tells people I died. Dad called me his biggest regret. And you think saying sorry fixes that? She rolled her eyes. God, you're so dramatic. It was just jokes. Besides, what did you expect showing up looking like that? She gestured at my work clothes like I was wearing actual garbage. I wasn't even mad anymore. I was just tired. Tired of them thinking they could treat people like this and face no consequences. So I decided to let her in on a little secret. You know that regulatory thing Dad mentioned? I asked her. The one where you need my signature? She tensed up. How did you know about that? I smiled. Because I actually read the family trust documents when I turned 21. Unlike you and Micah, who just signed whatever Dad put in front of you. There's a clause requiring all beneficiaries to sign off on any major changes. And since I never signed anything removing myself, you wouldn't, she said, but her voice wavered. You wouldn't sabotage the entire family out of spite, wouldn't I? I asked. After what you all did, why shouldn't I? She switched tactics. Dale, be realistic. You can't fight Dad on this. He has connections, resources. He'll crush you. That's when I decided to show her. I pulled up my shop's client list on my tablet and handed it to her. Scroll through that, I said. Her eyes widened as she recognized name after name. Celebrities, business leaders, even a few of Dad's golfing buddies, all my clients. How did you, she started. Because I'm good at what I do, I told her. People talk, word spreads. While you guys were pretending I didn't exist, I was building something. She handed the tablet back like it had burned her. Fine. What do you want? Money? A public apology? What will it take for you to sign? I thought about it for a second. I want Dad to introduce me properly to his business partners, the ones who laughed at me. I want him to tell them what I actually do. And I want Mom to stop telling people I'm dead. Layla looked relieved, like she'd expected worse. That's it? That's all you want? For now, I said. I'll let you know what else after that happens. She left in a hurry, probably to report back to Dad. I went back to work feeling pretty good about how things were shifting. Later that night, I got a text from Micah. Dude, WTF? Why are you making this so difficult? Just sign the papers and we can all move on. I ignored it. Around 9, the house phone rang. Yes, I still have a landline because cell reception in my garage is spotty. It was Mom. First time I'd heard her voice in 4 years. Dale, she said, all tearful and dramatic. How could you do this to us after everything we've done for you? I almost laughed. What exactly have you done for me, Mom? Pretend I don't exist? Tell the neighbors I died? She got flustered. That was just a figure of speech. I was upset that you threw away all our sacrifices for you. What sacrifices? I asked. All you and Dad did was try to force me to be someone I'm not. This is all very hurtful, Dale, she said, suddenly playing the victim. We're getting calls from friends asking questions. Someone saw your father at your shop. People are talking. And there it was. Their real concern. Not me, not the relationship, but what people might say. Their precious reputation. That sounds like a you problem, I told her. She gasped like I'd slapped her. I never raised you to be cruel. You never raised me to be anything, I said. You just expected me to follow the plan, and when I didn't, you threw me away. The line was quiet for a minute. Then she tried a different angle. Your father isn't well, Dale. His blood pressure, this stress isn't good for him. Nice try, I said. He looked perfectly healthy while he was humiliating me in front of his friends. She started crying then. Actual tears. Or a good imitation of them. Dale, please. Just sign the papers. We can talk about everything else after. I'll think about it, I said, and hung up. This morning I got a certified letter from Dad's lawyer. Turns out there's a board meeting next week where some major decisions about the firm are happening. They need that signature by Monday, or Dad could lose his voting rights or something. I've decided what I'm going to do. This isn't just about making them sweat anymore. They've shown me exactly who they are and what they think of me. And now they need something only I can provide. Tomorrow, I'm meeting with that SEC client who showed me the documents in the first place. Not to turn my family in. I'm not looking to send anyone to jail, but to understand exactly what I'm dealing with and what leverage I really have. Then on Friday, I've arranged to meet Dad and his partners at the country club. The same one where they all laughed at me. Only this time, I won't be showing up in my work clothes driving my beater car. I've spent the past few days getting my restored 1972 Skyline ready. It's a car collectors would kill for, and I'm having my suit tailored tonight, the one I keep for meeting high-end clients. Let's see how they react when they realize the failure they mocked holds all the cards now. Update 2. Okay, so things have escalated since my last update. If you haven't read the previous posts, quick recap. My finance-obsessed family cut me off 4 years ago when I dropped out of business school to work on cars, then invited me to Dad's retirement party just to humiliate me in front of everyone. I left behind an envelope with copies of shady financial documents I'd seen with Dad's signature. Turns out they need my signature on some regulatory paperwork by Monday, or Dad loses his voting rights at the firm. So I met with that SEC client yesterday, the guy who originally showed me the questionable documents. I didn't tell him anything about my family drama, just asked some hypothetical questions about what happens in situations like the one Dad's in. Turns out it's worse than I thought. What Dad and Micah were doing wasn't just creative accounting. It was straight-up fraud. They've been valuing certain assets at whatever numbers made their books look good. The SEC guy said people absolutely go to jail for this kind of thing, and seemed kind of suspicious about why I was asking, so I quickly changed the subject to his car. I was still processing this when Micah showed up at my shop. Not like Dad in his fancy suit or Layla in her designer casual. Micah came in looking like absolute shit. Unshaven, wrinkled clothes, like he hadn't slept in days. Dale, you have to sign these papers, he said, dropping a folder on my workbench. Dad's going crazy. The board meeting is Monday, and without your signature, we're screwed. I didn't even open the folder. Why should I help you? You all made it pretty clear what you think of me. He ran his hands through his hair, looking around my shop like he was seeing it for the first time. I didn't know you had all this, he said. Dad always said you were just wasting time with junk cars. Yeah, well, Dad says a lot of things that aren't true, I told him. Like apparently telling everyone I deliver pizzas. Micah had the decency to look embarrassed. We didn't know what you were doing. You never told us. I laughed. You never asked. 4 years, not one of you called to see how I was doing, but now you need something, so here you are. He got this weird look on his face. Dale, I did try to call you. Like 50 times that first year. I thought he was bullshitting me, but then he pulled out his phone and showed me his call history from years back. Dozens of calls to my number, all declined or sent to voicemail. I never got those calls, I told him. He looked confused. Dad said you were blocking all our numbers, that you told him never to contact you again, and that's when I realized. Dad had been lying to everyone. I never blocked anyone. I never told anyone not to contact me. He was the one who cut me off and then told everyone I was the one who walked away. I was still processing this when Micah dropped another bomb. You know why Dad's really retiring, right? I figured it was related to the documents I'd seen, but I played dumb. No, why? The firm's been under investigation. Dad was pushed out. That whole retirement party was just for show. Everyone at the office knows something's up, but the partners are trying to keep it quiet until after the quarterly reports. Suddenly, the urgency made sense. Dad wasn't just trying to protect his pride, he was trying to stay out of legal trouble. And he needed my signature because... Wait, I asked Micah, what exactly am I supposed to be signing? He looked uncomfortable. It's complicated. There's this family trust that owns a chunk of the firm. All beneficiaries have to sign off on any changes. Dad transferred some assets around to, keep them protected during the transition. Translation. Dad was hiding assets before the shit hit the fan, and he needed my signature to make it look legitimate. I decided to push further. So if I don't sign, what happens exactly? Micah looked even more uncomfortable. Dad loses voting control. The board can force a full audit. And if they find certain discrepancies, jail? I asked. He didn't answer, which was answer enough. I told him I'd think about it, and he left, looking defeated. But not before dropping one last bomb. Apparently, Mom and Dad had been fighting about me for years. Mom wanted to reach out after the first year, but Dad convinced her I wanted nothing to do with them. He'd been controlling the narrative this whole time. After Micah left, I decided to see things for myself. I drove downtown to Dad's firm and walked right into the lobby like I belonged there. I was wearing decent clothes, not a suit, but nice jeans and a button-up. The security guy didn't even question me. I took the elevator up and just observed. You could feel the tension in the air. People huddled in corners whispering. Dad's office door was closed, blinds drawn. No one looking particularly happy. I was about to leave when I overheard two guys by the water cooler. "Did you see Reynolds' son at the party? Total disaster. Showed up looking like a homeless person. Guess the apple fell pretty far from the tree." I walked right up to them. "Hi, I'm Dale Reynolds. We haven't officially met." The look on their faces was priceless. They stammered something about nice to meet me and practically ran back to their desks. As I was leaving, I bumped into one of Dad's partners, a guy named Wilson, who'd been at the party. He recognized me immediately and looked panicked. "Dale, what a surprise to see you here." "Just checking out Dad's office," I said casually. "Impressive building." He glanced around nervously. "Yes, well, your father has built quite a legacy. Speaking of which, I understand there are some papers requiring your attention." "Word travels fast," I said. He lowered his voice. "Look, Dale, I don't know what's going on between you and your father, but this is bigger than family drama. There are a lot of people who could be affected." "Including you?" I asked. He didn't answer, just handed me his card. "Please call me if you'd like to discuss this further. Perhaps over lunch?" I pocketed the card and left. On my way out, I noticed a display case in the lobby with photos from Dad's retirement party. There I was, looking uncomfortable, while Dad had his arm around me like we were best buddies instead of what was really happening. Him practically dragging me over to be humiliated. I took a photo of the display with my phone. Evidence of their bullshit. The next morning, Mom showed up at my shop. Not in her usual designer outfit, but still overdressed for a garage in her casual linen pants and expensive blouse. She looked around with this expression like she was touring a third-world country. "Dale," she said, "this is where you work? It's so industrial." "It's a garage, Mom." "That's kind of the point." She wandered around, keeping her arms close, like she was afraid to touch anything. Then she noticed the waiting area where I keep magazines and photos of completed projects. She picked up a framed article, the feature that Japanese auto magazine did on my shop last year. "You're in magazines?" she asked, sounding genuinely surprised. "Several," I said. "Turns out I'm pretty good at what I do." She put the frame down carefully. "Your father says you're being difficult about signing some papers." "I'm being difficult?" I repeated. "After what happened at the party?" She had the decency to look embarrassed. "We may have been a bit harsh." "A bit harsh? You told people I was dead." She waved her hand dismissively. "That was just a figure of speech. I was upset you cut us off." "I didn't cut anyone off," I told her. "Dad did that. Micah showed me his call history. Dad told everyone I was blocking your numbers." She looked genuinely confused. "But Richard said a lot of things. I cut her off. Most of them weren't true." She sat down heavily in one of the client chairs. "I don't understand why you're doing this, Dale. Your father has worked his whole life to build something for this family." "For himself," I corrected her. "Not for me. He made that very clear when he disowned me for not following his plan." She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue she pulled from her purse. "People are talking, Dale. The country club is—" "There are rumors. Someone said the SEC is involved." I just stared at her. "That's what you're worried about? What the country club thinks?" "These are our friends," she said. "Our community." I shook my head. "No, they're the people who laughed while Dad called me his biggest regret. The people who took photos of me being humiliated." That's when one of my regular clients pulled up. Guy who collects vintage Japanese cars. He came in all excited because I'd found a rare part he needed. Mom watched in confusion as we talked cars for a few minutes. This wealthy collector treating me like a valued expert instead of a failure. After he left, Mom looked at me differently. "Who was that?" she asked. "Just a client," I said. "I work on his collection." "But he seemed so—" She struggled to find the word. "Respectful." "Because I'm respected in my field, Mom. Just not in our family." She looked around the shop again, but this time actually seeing it. The specialized tools. The rare cars. The waiting list board with names she recognized. "I had no idea," she said quietly. "I know," I replied. "You never asked." She left shortly after that, promising to talk to Dad. I didn't count on it making any difference. That afternoon, I got a call from an industry contact who specializes in luxury watches. I'd mentioned Dad's retirement gift, this expensive limited edition watch his partners had given him at the party. Dale, you're not going to believe this, my contact said. That watch? Total fake. Good replica, but definitely counterfeit. Same with the ones they gave the other partners. Someone spent maybe $1,000 each on watches they're passing off as $30,000 pieces. I thanked him and hung up, laughing to myself. Even Dad's fancy retirement gifts were fraudulent. Seemed fitting somehow. I used this new info when Wilson called to arrange that lunch he'd mentioned. Told him I knew about the watches. There was a long silence on the phone before he asked how I knew. I know a lot of things, I told him. Like how those SEC documents in the black envelope I gave Dad could cause problems for everyone, not just him. We need to talk, Wilson said, his voice urgent now. Not just lunch. All the partners. Tomorrow. I agreed to meet them the next morning. That evening, I got a text from Layla. Dad's freaking out. What did you say to Mom? She's been crying all afternoon. I ignored it. Then around 10 p.m., Dad himself called. Dale, he said, his voice strained. We need to resolve this situation. I'm prepared to meet your demands. I stayed silent, letting him sweat. The introduction to my partners, acknowledging your business. We can do that. Just sign the papers. And the lies about me? I asked. The ones you've been telling for 4 years? He sighed heavily. What do you want, a public apology? Fine. Whatever it takes. I'll think about it, I told him, and hung up. The next morning, I woke up to an email from the country club. Dad had added me as a family member on his account. There was also a text from Mom asking for photos of my shop for the family business section of their stupid country club newsletter. They were scrambling, trying to rewrite history, trying to make it look like they'd been supporting me all along. Too little. Too late. I spent the morning getting ready for the meeting. Got my suit pressed, the one I use for meeting high-end clients. Finished detailing my restored Skyline, the one worth more than Dad's Mercedes. Called my lawyer to review the trust documents Micah had left. Turns out there was a reason they were so desperate for my signature. The family trust Dad had set up wasn't just about voting rights at the firm. It was his backup plan, a way to shield assets if things went south. Without my signature, those assets would be frozen if there was an investigation. I called my SEC client just to confirm some details without giving anything away. What he told me made everything clear. Dad wasn't just facing embarrassment or loss of control at the firm. He was potentially facing criminal charges, which meant I wasn't just holding his reputation in my hands. I was holding his freedom. As I got ready to leave for the meeting, I got one last desperate text from Dad. Please, son, I'm begging you, don't destroy everything I've built. For a moment, I hesitated. Was I taking this too far? Then I remembered standing on that patio while they all laughed at me, while Mom said they pretend I'm dead, while Dad called me his biggest regret. I texted back, I'll see you at the club in an hour. And Dad, I'm not destroying anything. You did that yourself. Final update. So here's the finale to this whole saga. If you missed the previous posts, my finance-obsessed family cut me off 4 years ago when I dropped out of business school to work on cars, then humiliated me at Dad's retirement party. I left behind an envelope with evidence of Dad's financial fraud, and now they need my signature on regulatory documents by Monday, or Dad could face serious consequences. Yesterday morning, I woke up feeling oddly calm, like when you know a storm is coming but you've already battened down the hatches. I spent an hour detailing my restored 1972 Skyline GTR, the car I'd been working on between client jobs for almost 2 years. Most people have no idea what it is, but car people know it's worth serious money. Like 6 figures serious. I put on my client meeting suit. Nothing flashy, just a well-fitted Navy suit I use when meeting with collectors who ship their rare cars to me. Checked myself in the mirror and barely recognized the guy looking back. Not because of the suit, but because I looked confident, like someone who knows exactly what they're worth. I drove to Meadowbrook Country Club, the same place where this all started a week ago. Same valet stand, different valet guy. But the reaction was completely different when I pulled up in the Skyline. The valet's eyes went wide. Holy shit, is that a Hakasuka? He asked, using the Japanese nickname for this model. Are those original Watanabes? Referring to the wheels. I just nodded and handed him the keys. Take care of her, I said. And maybe park it out front where everyone can see it. He grinned like I'd just made his day. Walking into that club felt surreal. Last time I was in work clothes being dragged around by my dad. Now I was striding through in a suit that probably cost less than what most members spend on golf clubs, but I wore it like armor. I spotted Dad first, pacing near the entrance to the private dining room where we were meeting. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in a week. Pale, unshaven, with dark circles under his eyes. Mom was next to him trying to look calm, while obsessively checking her phone. Dad saw me and did a literal double take. Dale, he said, sounding confused. You, you look different. I'm the same person, I told him. You're just seeing me clearly for the first time. Mom was staring at me like I was a stranger. She reached out to straighten my tie, a reflex action she'd done 1,000 times with Dad and Micah. I stepped back just out of reach. We've reserved the maple room, she said, trying to sound normal. Everyone's waiting. Before we go in, I said, let's get something straight. I'm not here to make nice and pretend the last 4 years didn't happen. I'm here because you need something from me. Dad swallowed hard. We're prepared to make amends, he said, glancing around nervously. I looked him dead in the eyes. There's a difference between making amends and avoiding consequences, I said. Let's see which one you're actually interested in. The private dining room was set up with a long table. Wilson and 3 other partners were already seated, along with Micah and Layla. Everyone looked up when we walked in, and there was this moment of collective confusion as they tried to reconcile the Dale they'd mocked a week ago with the person standing in front of them. Wilson recovered first, standing up to shake my hand. Dale, thank you for coming, he said, like this was his meeting and not my dad's desperate attempt to save his ass. I sat down at the far end of the table, forcing everyone to turn to see me. Dad sat at the head, trying to maintain the illusion that he was still in charge. Wilson cleared his throat. As you know, we're here to discuss the family trust documents that require Dale's signature before Monday's board meeting. Richard has explained the misunderstanding that occurred at the retirement celebration. Misunderstanding? I repeated. Is that what we're calling public humiliation now? Layla rolled her eyes. God, Dale, are you still on that? It was just some jokes that got out of hand. I turned to her. You called me a broke loser with one shirt. Mom told everyone I was dead. Dad called me his biggest regret in human form, in front of 30 people, while someone took photos. The partners shifted uncomfortably. One of them, gray-haired guy named Peterson, who'd been at the party, looked genuinely embarrassed. Perhaps we could focus on the matter at hand, Dad said, trying to regain control. Dale, we need your signature on these documents. He slid a folder toward me. I didn't touch it. What exactly am I signing? Dad and Wilson exchanged glances. It's just standard trust reallocation paperwork, Wilson said smoothly. Nothing unusual. Then you won't mind if my lawyer reviews it first, I replied, pulling out my phone. I can have him on speakerphone right now. That won't be necessary, Dad said quickly. It's family business. I leaned forward. Is it? Or is it about hiding assets before the SEC investigation goes public? The room went silent. Peterson turned to Dad. Richard, what is he talking about? Dad's face flushed red. Dale is confused. There's no investigation. I pulled out my own folder and slid copies of the documents from the black envelope across the table. These say otherwise. Financial statements with valuations that don't match reality. Signatures from both you and Micah. Dated entries that coincide with the SEC's timeline. How did you get those? Micah asked, his voice cracking. From someone at the SEC, I said. Someone who happens to be a client of mine. Someone who brought his car to my shop and showed me these while I was working on it. Dad slammed his hand on the table. This is outrageous. You had no right to share confidential information. I didn't share anything, I shot back. I'm not the one committing fraud. I'm just the one you need to help cover it up. Wilson looked like he might be sick. Richard, is this true? He asked. Are we under investigation? Dad was cornered, and he knew it. It's a routine inquiry, he insisted. Nothing serious. That's why we need to reallocate the trust assets now, to protect everyone's interest during the transition. Peterson wasn't buying it. My retirement savings are tied up in this firm, Richard. My children's college funds. If there's an investigation, Dad cut him off. Everything will be fine if we can just get these documents signed, he said, looking at me with desperation. I sat back in my chair. Here's what's going to happen, I said. I'm going to sign those papers. Dad's relief was visible, but short-lived. After, I continued, you do the following. First, you tell everyone the truth about why I left and what I've been doing for the past 4 years. No more lies about me delivering pizza or living in a studio apartment with roommates. Dad nodded quickly. Of course, of course. Second, I said, turning to Mom, you stop telling people I'm dead, or that you only have 2 children. You acknowledge me publicly as your son, including to all those country club friends you care so much about. Mom looked pained, but nodded. Third, I said to Micah and Layla, you both admit that you've been perpetuating Dad's lies about me, that you knew I wasn't blocking your calls, but went along with the story because it was easier than standing up to him. Layla started to protest, but Micah cut her off. It's true, he admitted. I knew something wasn't right. I should have tried harder to find you. Fourth, I said, turning back to Dad, you make a public statement at the firm acknowledging what I actually do for a living and that my business is successful. No more failure son narrative. Dad hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. And finally, I said, looking around the table, I want everyone here to understand something. I'm not doing this to save you. I'm doing it because sending my family to jail won't undo 4 years of being treated like garbage. I took the folder and opened it. The documents were exactly what I expected, a scheme to move assets around to make them harder to trace. I signed where indicated, but before handing it back, I added, but know this, if any of you ever treat me like that again, these copies go straight to the SEC. I'd rather see you all face consequences than endure another minute of your bullshit. I passed the folder back to Dad, who looked both relieved and furious. The meeting wrapped up quickly after that. Wilson and the other partners practically ran out, no doubt to start damage control. As everyone was leaving, Peterson stopped by my chair. That car outside, the Skyline. That's yours? I nodded. Beautiful restoration, he said. My son's into Japanese imports. Always talking about Skylines and Supras. Says they're impossible to find in that condition. I handed him my business card. Tell him to stop by my shop sometime. I specialize in those impossible-to-find cars. Peterson looked at the card, then at my dad, confusion clear on his face. I thought, your father said you were unemployed. Dad looked like he wanted to disappear. I might have been misinformed about Dale's situation, he muttered. Peterson pocketed my card. I certainly was, he said coldly. Seems there's a lot of misinformation going around. After everyone left, it was just me and my family in that fancy dining room. The silence was heavy. Layla broke it first. So that's it? We do what you say and you don't ruin us? That's about the size of it, I said. This is blackmail, Dad snapped, some of his old fire returning now that the partners were gone. I stood up. No, this is consequences. You spent 4 years pretending I didn't exist. Now you need me. And I'm setting terms. That's just business. Isn't that what you always taught us? Mom dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. I just don't understand why you couldn't have gone into finance like your siblings. Why did you have to be so different? I looked at her. Really looked at her. Because I wanted to create something, not just move money around. Because I'm good at what I do. Because it makes me happy. Not that you ever asked. I headed for the door, then turned back. Oh, and one more thing. Those fancy watches you all got at the retirement party? They're fakes. Good replicas, but definitely counterfeit. Might want to keep that quiet. Wouldn't want people to know everything about this family is fraudulent. I walked out feeling lighter than I had in years. The valet had parked my Skyline right in front of the entrance where everyone could see it. A small crowd of car enthusiasts had gathered around it, admiring the restoration. As I got in, I saw Dad watching from the club entrance. His expression a mix of anger, embarrassment, and maybe, just maybe, a touch of respect. That was 3 days ago. Since then, things have moved quickly. Dad made the statement at his firm acknowledging my business. Mom reluctantly added photos of my shop to their family display at home. Micah called to apologize properly, admitting Dad had manipulated everyone. Layla sent a stiff text saying she hopes we can move forward professionally, whatever that means. The board meeting happened yesterday. Dad kept his voting rights thanks to my signature. The trust documents went through without a hitch. The SEC inquiry is still ongoing, but with the assets reallocated, the potential damage is minimized. I'm not naive enough to think they've suddenly seen the error of their ways. Dad still thinks I wasted my potential. Mom still wishes I fit into her perfect family image. My siblings still see me as the black sheep, but now they know something they didn't before. I'm not powerless. I'm not a failure. And I'm definitely not someone they can mock without consequences. My shop is busier than ever. Word spreads fast in car circles, and somehow the story of a custom Japanese import shop owned by the son of Richard Reynolds has made the rounds. I've gotten calls from collectors as far away as California. Yesterday, I finished restoring the client's Skyline, the one I was working on the day of the retirement party. When he picked it up, he mentioned he'd heard through friends that I was that Reynolds kid who went his own way. Said it with respect, like it was something admirable. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe it was. I don't know what happens next with my family. We're not having Sunday dinners or anything. The damage is too deep for that. But there's a new dynamic now. They know I have my own power, my own success, my own life, and they know there are consequences for how they treat me. That's enough for now. As for Dad's retirement gift, I sent him a framed photo of my Skyline parked in front of his country club with a note that said, "This is what success really looks like. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying someone, it's forcing them to see you for who you really are."